Hello, so we are right where we finished off last video down at this beachfront here. And what I've been doing is I've just been planning it out a bit more using World Edit. I've been planning out this seawall using a lot of circles sort of centered at these sand blocks here. And so I was mostly going to go for this sort of smooth S shape until I actually realised that this circle sort of intersecting here actually created a cool contrast of like a sharp angle. So I think that'll look good with the contrast between the smooth and the sharp angles. Okay, so now I've continued the decking and I've added some stone to the top section, so it's looking a bit more complete in that aspect. And I've also just added a bit of sand. I've blocked it out, so currently it's very geometric. So I've done a lot more progress here on the beach. I've now properly terrained the sand, even though I've kind of left what's underwater a bit messy, to be honest. I've added a small stream, which you probably noticed immediately right here. So what you may have noticed is these random granite blocks. These are actually me planning out where I'm going to put the palm trees. So I've sort of got a few that are going to follow this road here, and they're going to come off the road a bit to follow the edge and then curve back onto the road here. And then we've got a few more here which are following the road along that edge. And so then I'm probably going to continue the stone across to follow the trees, so we'll raise it up by one block, and then this will be down a block on this side. I hope that makes some sense, so let's get right into building it. Right, so now a quick progress update is I've pasted in the palm trees along this edge here, of course varying the heights and rotations. I've also extended the road here, which is nice. Now most obviously you can see I've actually designed a new style of palm tree that's a lot shorter, and so this is like a shorter bushier palm tree with some cocoa beans, which I think adds some nice detail. So this is of course going to follow the edge here, and then in the middle here I'm actually going to put a small skate park like on Santa Monica Beach, if you've ever seen photos of that. I've got the light grey concrete powder on this level here, which contrasts nicely to the stone on the level above, though I would still like to add some andesite into that to break it up a bit. So as you can see, I've added a skate park, for which I've done a tutorial quite a while ago actually, so you can go watch that if you want for some tips and tricks. This one's a more curved design to fit with the curves of the beach. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. It's pretty simple. So now I think it's time to work on some high-rise apartments and buildings to really add as a backdrop to this street here, which I think will be pretty cool. So let's get right into it. Alright, so here you can see I've started work on a new tower block. This is very much inspired by a lot of the ones around it, because I wanted to sort of keep that similar style, and so it's sort of got that slightly old aesthetic to it. And so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on the apartments that are going to attach to it. As you can see here, I've sort of started what might be a facade, but I don't think I'm going to go with that because it's a bit grey, and I want to keep this area looking more fun, like you can see the building I've got over there. But anyway, I think the next job to do is to add a roof to this, a base to this, and continue the block. So let's do that. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a bit more progress. I've of course added the base to this building here, as well as a small like start of a roof. But I wanted to show that I've also added these other buildings around the back of it here to fill up this part of the street. So we've got this new building here with this kind of like outer sort of scaffolding look, even though it's not scaffolding, it's just balconies, but it takes sort of inspiration from this building here. And same with this building, it's got like some of the red, some of the black and things, so I think altogether it feels therefore quite cohesive without being too repetitive. Let's get finishing this block here by building the roof and the rooftop garden. Okay, so I may have got a bit distracted doing the scenery around it. As you can see, I've kind of transformed the street here with a few more planters and some palm trees and things. As you can see, I'm now also working on this area here, where I've marked out where I'll place some more palm trees. Anyway, the next thing to do is to finish that off, and then we can actually finish off this block of apartments this time. Okay, so I've done a lot more progress on this block here. Now you can actually see we've got a full block. I mean, there's still a few details missing, such as on this garden I'd like to add some trees. I'd also like to vary the texture of the andesite here, so mix in some cobblestone as well. I need to finish the roofs as well and things, but I think you've got a good idea of how this block is going to look. I'm actually quite happy with this interesting different style of building here with the big balconies, so I might try and repeat that somewhere else. Okay, so now I've actually taken a break from building this set of apartments here to build a new block of buildings over here, as you can see. Now here you can very much see where I've started to include this sort of Spanish resort town influence, especially with the windows there, where I've added this implication of a curved roof, and I've alternated the black and grey stained glass to create like a window seam effect, and I think that's pretty cool. So the next thing to do, of course, is to move it into position a bit closer to this building, and then I'll design another similar set of buildings that's going to be a story lower. Okay, so now I've added another block in a similar style, just a story lower and with a sandstone colour palette. As you can see, I've stepped it back a bit from the street to give the street a lot more depth and variety. And so that's why I've filled this space in front of it here with what's currently like a canopy, which will be like a restaurant with chairs under it. So now, to plan out the bit behind it here, I'm going to put some tennis courts, and I'm thinking I might be able to fit one or two of them along this way like this, or maybe even 4 along a big row like this. But I'll see once I've kind of marked out the shape of these buildings and the size of the tennis courts. Alright, so now I've designed the back of these buildings, as you can see. Of course, I've done a basic side to go along with it. So here you can see I've added the stairs that will go along the side as well. And I think that's looking pretty cool. They're looking a bit more complete now, minus the details, of course. Now, so here I've got 3 tennis courts, and I wanted them to be all like exact real life size. So they're 11 blocks wide and 23 blocks long. However, I was trying to decide on a design for the tennis courts, and originally I was going to go with something like this with the white lines, but then I'm actually going to do what I did in my survival city and what I showed in my video on how to build realistic sports courts, is use this stairs technique to create the inference of lines, and this just also means I can have the tram lines and things, which adds a bit more detail. So now, as you can see, I've added the tennis courts in properly, and I've added a nice fence around them, which I think looks pretty good. But I do think it needs a bit more greenery around it, mainly just a few bushes and things that will help integrate it into its surroundings. Now, I've already added some palm trees over here, but I think I've overdone it because they kind of block the street, and I'm not very happy with how cozy the walkway is here. So I'm going to remove these and focus your eyes on the palm trees at the back, I think. Similarly, round the front, I've been doing a bit of work. I've just added a few planters. However, I might need to remove these palm trees here so that you get better views of this building and these buildings. And otherwise there's a few too many palm trees so that they sort of all blend together. And to account for this, I'll then add some bamboo to add some height and vibrancy to these planters over here. Hello, okay, so now I've just done some chairs under the canopy here for a little like restaurant area. Now you've noticed probably that I've only done 3 seats per table. I know this is less realistic, but I just feel like it keeps the space more open. Now on the palm tree update, I have removed the palm trees over here, because now I think it just opens up the view a bit more, and so you can really appreciate your surroundings. And then over here, I've actually kept the palm trees, I've just moved them over 1 block, so now you've got this nice little walkway to use, and I think that makes this area feel a lot nicer. So now the next thing to do, I think, is just continue planning so that we can get a proper beachfront planned, ready for next episode to fill it in with lots of buildings and parks. Alright, so this is what we've got using World Edit, so I can get all the circles and things. And as you can see, here's like the little extra lane for if you're turning left, and I think that's a nice little detail. And over here I've actually finished off with some more details along the street and things by varying the texture of the pavement. and I think that's quite effective. I've also just experimented with adding a bench and some more greenery, but I think the thing that will really make it is actually adding some street lamps, which will also help light it up at night a bit. And so that's what I'm going to do next, and let's see what design I come up with. I'm sorry, I just ended up copying the design from my survival world for the street lamps, but I think it's quite an effective design. But I've made sure to be careful and specific where I place them. For example, here I originally placed them in the centre, but I thought moving it to the corner just framed it nicer, even though now it's not symmetrical around this building. Okay, so then there's a few more over here, and then I'll probably expand over here next episode. I had to do it, I just had to add a few more palm trees over here. So, I think that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, please, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe, as it always helps me out. And actually, I could do with a name for this city, as I have no idea what I'm going to call it. Currently it's just my creative city. So any suggestions you might have, you could leave in the comments, I'd really appreciate that. And the last thing is, this is what it looks like now with shaders. I don't usually play with shaders just because my frames drop a bit too low to play with, but just in case you're interested.